I would not define myself as an artist, but as a dream maker. I make my dreams come real.
Niki de Saint Phalle. Great Women in Art is a podcast produced by AWARE, Archives of Women Artists Research and Exhibition, in collaboration with the INA, with the support of Maison Veuve Clicquot and the Ministry of Culture for Délégation à la transmission des savoirs et à la démocratisation culturelle.
Les grandes dames de l'art.
Great Women in Art. Great Women in Art.
Les grandes dames de l'art.
The podcast Great Women in Art gives a voice to the female artists of the 20th century. They speak of their work, their lives, the world around them, and their achievements. Let's go in search of their presence, their secrets. Let us rediscover the hidden history of women artists through their voices. To begin, I would like to ask about sculpture, which has long been thought of a technique reserved for men. Women have ventured in it, measured on a monumental scale, and have even, for some, taken over public space. In fact, one of the best-known female artists of the 20th century is a sculptor who claims to be one, and whose pride is to have rightly imposed women on the street, her nanas. This is Niki de Saint Phalle, to whom I would like to dedicate this first episode of Great Women in Art. Niki de Saint Phalle was a prolific artist that has created 3,500 works in her 50 years career. She draws, paints. She even said during the introduction of a television show, "I am Niki de Saint Phalle and I make monumental sculptures." Because she was on television at a time when artists rarely were, and women even more so. It was with the shooting of a rifle that the artist made a notable entrance into the living rooms of the French on cable news at 1 p.m. on the 21st of April, 1961. She was 31 years old, and she made the front page of the press in France and all over the world. A few years later, in 1965, the television show Tilt invited her for a long interview in her studio. The uncomfortable journalist teased the artist about her non-domestic practice. She answered him, combining humor and determination.
You have diving gloves, you dip rags in a bucket, you spread them out. It's a little bit like the work of a good little housewife, isn't it?
You're right, that's one aspect of my work. However, the output is not culinary. I will not present you with a stew, but I try to present you with a kind of spiritual raving about myself.
And yet, it's curious. I asked you the question a little at random, but you finally answered that it has something to do with women's work. Yet the result is not at all.
Well, I totally disagree with you. The result is feminine, since I'm a woman. I want to express the poetry I feel inside, and I can only express a female poetry. A male could never do that.
Niki de Saint Phalle did not allow herself to be intimidated. On the contrary, she refocused the interview on her creative process and explained how the discovery of objects, which she combined with her paintings, allowed her to move from painting to sculpture.
First of all, it's oil painting, an extremely figurative and intricate form of painting, which is very much related to what I do today. Unfortunately, or fortunately for me, my technique was not good enough for me to fully achieve what I wanted to say. So those first paintings had some kind of poetry about them, but the beholder, when looking at them, would not recognize all the objects that I wanted them to recognize when it was essential for me. Now with plastic, I can use specific objects, and the onlooker understands more easily what I want to say.
That same year, in 1965, on the show Dîme d'âme d'homme, directed by Jean-Christophe Averty, Saint Phalle discussed her wildest dread, to one-day rival Gaudi's Gale Park that she discovered in Barcelona in 1955, when she was 25 years old. This aesthetic shock was essential in her career. She never ceased to find the time, the means, and the space to achieve it.
What I'd like now is to make things for the outside, for outdoors. What gave me the idea is I've seen some sculpture shows that were so boring, deadly boring, always bronze and stone, and anyway, abstraction doesn't hold up next to a tree. You need something quirky, joyful, with a touch of humor to be up to par with nature. So I'd love to make huge things, and if somebody, unfortunately the rich are so constipated today they will not commission me, but I'd love to create a big garden, to make some bonne femme, to put on it, on a bench. I want to make the trees, the garden, the ground, everything.
12 years later, in 1977, Saint Phalle reflected on her career during an interview as the Monday guest with Pierre Descartes on Radio France Culture. The 47-year-old artist spoke with confidence and poise about her life and her work that was in reality at a turning point. The following year, she began creating her large sculpture park, which was still a secret at the time. This radio program offered her the opportunity for a kind of spoken retrospective. She notably spoke of the tir, the shootings, the performances which made her famous in the early 60s.
Les tirs, the shootings, were also a very aggressive act, a rebellion, and also something almost mystical. I remember I had to paint those altars. I would shoot at them 3-4 times, in white. Everything had to be white, immaculate, virgin-like, so as to make the killing even more violent. In the beginning, I was reluctant to do the shooting myself. I would watch others shoot at my own paintings as a spectator. But eventually, I took it on me. I accepted this violation to violate my paintings. Something very funny happened. It was my first tir exhibit at Janine de Goldschmidt's in 61, I guess. There was this older gentleman attending the vernissage, and I told Jean, "Who is this pain in the ass?" He kept asking, "When can I shoot? I want to shoot." So I told him, "Listen, we're still setting it up. You have to wait a while, go to a cafe, have a drink. You come back when you feel better." But Jean nudged at me, "Easy there, be nice. It's Fautrier," he whispered. And indeed, it was Fautrier, impatiently waiting to shoot at the painting. He hung out all night. He just wanted to make a Fautrier. He didn't want other people to shoot. He would say, "Shoot right in the middle." It was so funny. I've always been fascinated by the artists' reactions to the shooting, very violent reactions. Once in Stockholm, we did a shooting with Bob Rauschenberg, Jean Tinguely, and Pontus Hulten, who is now the head of Beaubourg. There we were standing in front of one of my first shootings. I remember Rauschenberg yelling, "I want red, give me more red." When we ran out of bullets, he started picking up stones to throw at the picture. They all did. And that's when Jean turned around and said, "Wait a minute, it's a work of art." And just like brats caught red-handed, they all dropped their stones. But the aggressiveness that playing had unleashed.
After the shootings, Saint Phalle reconstructed feminine figures from objects that took on evocative titles: the wives, the prostitutes, the goddesses. Little by little, these monochrome and threatening female figures became colourful and voluminous. Here were the nanas. This series became so famous that one may think they know all about it. But have we really understood who these nanas were? Are they simply happy? Simply dancing? Listening to the artist, one understands that they are warriors for the women's cause, fight for blacks, for gender diversity. The nanas are warriors of the public space and pioneers of feminism.
D'abord, je travaillais dans le relief.
I started out working in relief, and shyly they came out. They became sculptures. They caught the third dimension. I had become a bit braver by then. I had more technical skills. And voila, there they were, the nana. Before that, I had been working with toys. On my figures, in relief, I would glue a whole contradiction of toys. Like the one we see in the film, it represents the high priestess, the mother of the 10,000 beings.
Alors, toujours ça exprimait cette contradiction. Par exemple, dans Celle,
so toys always express this contradiction. For example, in the mother character, the woman giving birth, you find some very peaceful, very soft elements, but they're alienated by other things that are extremely aggressive. You always have this duality. And finally, one day, the nanas were born from this duality. They got rid of their children's toys, they put makeup on, they painted themselves, and they became bonnes femmes, leaving all their children's games behind. And from that moment on, people saw them as very aggressive sculptures, because there they were dancing, making fun, they were joyful, and that's where I say that joy can often be very subversive.
The nanas are in the end Nana Maison, Nana Homes, Nana Palais, Nana Palaces, Nana Ville, Nana Cities. With their enveloping bodies, the artist offers a refuge to herself and the world. She reveals a secret fragility, the details of which she will only reveal years later, and from which these Nana Maisons, Nana Homes, protect her.
I always wanted to have some shelters, places where I could withdraw. I'm still wary of a certain vulnerability. I can be penetrated. Other people's problems, others can enter into me rather easily. So I must protect myself, and I believe many people feel the same. Hence the idea of a shelter. We have many shelters everywhere. Movie theaters are one. You have them everywhere. Why not in sculpture? Why not make shelters where people can go and dream, where they can isolate, cut away from the noise, only with themselves, where they can step back, a place to dream.
Un endroit pour rêver.
In 1966, Pontus Hultén invited Saint Phalle, Tinguely, and Pierre-Olof Utvelt to realize a project together for the Moderna Musette. He proposed a giant recumbent sculpture of a woman whose legs were open to welcome the public, having them penetrate an amusement park. She named this work after the Hon, She. The exhibition was a huge success.
It had to be a nana, we all agreed, that's it. And we worked so hard. I mean, it was a huge piece of work. She was, I don't know how many meters long. She was tall as a cathedral, enormous, this bonne femme. We called her the tallest whore in the world. And she had 100,000 visitors in one summer. Not bad. She was joyful on the outside, like an Easter egg. The inside was an obvious place. And also inside there were several side attractions. You had some Tinguely's machines, a lover's bench, a fake art fair, a telephone, a planetarium.
Finally, after 1979, Niki de Saint Phalle began the construction of a large sculpture garden in Tuscany, which kept her occupied for almost 20 years. Inspired by the 22 tarot cards, she realized monumental sculptures, which are now homes for some, in cement covered in ceramic and glass mosaics. One feels the confidence of an artist who finally realized her dream, when on May 2nd, 1989, Frédéric Mitterrand invited her on his Channel 2 television program Du Côté de chez Fred. She told of what the figures of the tarot symbolized for her in her tarot garden.
The creative act there is a meditation on tarot cards that have fascinated artists over the centuries. Mantegna, T.S. Eliot, many artists showed great interest in tarot cards. They are fascinating. Their origins are obscure. They're connected to alchemy, to the Kabbalah. They're shrouded in mystery. So the garden version in Garavicchio, the tarot garden, is a sculpture version meant to approach the mysteries of the tarot, which is a path, a life path that shows us all the trials we'll have to go through, as well as a path of spirituality and belief.
In 1991, writer Jean Dève recorded a long interview across 3 afternoons with Niki de Saint Phalle. 1991 was also the year of Jean Tinguely's death, an occasion for her to revisit multiple of their collaborations carried out since the time they met. A couple that was known as the Bonnie and Clyde of art, the most well-known being the Stravinsky fountain in front of the Centre Pompidou. In 1983, Jean was invited by the Mairie de Paris and the Ministry of Culture, based on an idea of Pierre Boulez, director of IRCAM, and Claude Pompidou, to realize an artwork. This fountain has become a Parisian icon and reminds visitors of the neighborhood of the importance of the artist's body of work.
So Claude Pompidou talked to Chirac, they went to see Jean, they talked to Mitterrand, they all agreed. Then Jean went to check the square and he said, "No, I will not do it because I need colors, or else I do it with Niki. But as it is, with all the black on this square, no way." So they said, "Okay, do it with Niki then." I understand his reluctance. He wanted color there. So, as expected, he told me to go ahead, you start, and I went, "Well, okay then." The totem was Stravinsky. He said, "Go ahead," and I told him, "I'm going to prepare a few things for you. You'll pick and choose what inspires you. You'll find stuff." I started out with the hat, because it was fun, a revolving hat, and I went on making this and that, some 30 things, and Jean would pick the ones that amused him the most. The only thing I was told not to do was a nana. It was the only veto, but well, all right, never mind, there were other things to do.
Coordinated by Mathilde Croix and the Aware team. Directed by Élodie Royer. Music by Julian Ogil. Credits Andrew Nelson. Sound editing Basile Beaucaire. Scientific advisors Catherine Gonard and Marjorie Micucci. Translation Katia Porot. Translation of the artist's voice, Eve Dair. French voice, Camille Morino. English voice, Lou Doyon.